Hi everyone. I hope everybody are doing good. Today we are going to discuss about the concept called as NGINX. And we are going to discuss about what NGINX has resolved the current real world problems and why NGINX has gained the popularity in the current market. I can say as per the statistics, 90% of web servers has been hosting on NGINX. And if you have taken the package-based deployment and content-based deployment, both are used widely on NGINX. So we are going to discuss about each concept and what problems does NGINX has resolved. So I'm going to give just a small example, the current real world, which the problem has resolved by NGINX. Let's take example. There is a person who had developed the website called as X, Y, and Z. He has been running his website on the particular server, and the server, he opened the port number 5000 for accessing this particular server. And he's going to tell his users, his customers, saying that, hey, if you want to access my website, go and hit on particular 5000 port and you're going to get the response. So here is a user, and he had been hitting on particular port number 5000 with a followed by IP address, and he is going to get the response. Everything is working fine, there is no issue. What happened? The users has been increasing day by day. This particular website got popularity, and now today we have hundreds of users, and even this particular web server has built for 100 users only. And what happening? Suddenly the users requesting to the particular server has been raised from 100 to 1000. So as this guy know, whoever have built the website, this guy already knew that this server only can give response to the hundreds of requests, and it cannot perform thousands of requests. So what this guy do? He has created another replica of the same server and is hosting on another port number. So he has created the same server and he has deployed his his website on this particular web server. Now he has opened the port number 3000. So he has replicated the same server and he has deployed his same website on another server. He is going to notify to the users saying that, hey users, while accessing to the particular 5000 port number, if you have received any delay in terms of response, go and access my another web server, your port number, which is 3000. It is also serving the same website, which is X, Y, and Z. When you hit on this particular port number, you are going to get the response. So what users did, they have hit on the particular port number, they had been getting the response. Everything is fine. Now these two web servers has been giving response of 1000. So what happened? Again, the users has been day by day rising. From 1000 to the users has been increased from 10,000 and 1 lakh and so on. So what this guy had got to know that every day he has to create the same replica of another server and he has to notify to the user. It's not a good practice, right? It is not good practice to keep adding the servers and saying to the user, saying that, hey users, if you want to access my website, go and hit on the particular port number. This server is giving response on 5000, this server is giving response on 3000, another server is going to give response on some other port number. So this is not a good practice. That's where the industrialist has decided to design a software where it can act as a barrier for all this web server, and is going to open a one particular port number. That port number is going to contact all this web server and going to give a response. So that's what we call as NGINX. So we are going to discuss about that NGINX zone. Fine. We have discussed about what problem we have been facing. Now let's see how the NGINX has resolved our current problem, which is about the port, and every time we need to notify to the user. So what industrialist has designed as such a system, they are going to keep NGINX in between user and the servers. So NGINX is going to act as a barrier. And NGINX is coming with the three features. The first one is a load balancer, and second one is a reverse proxy, and third one is a HTTP caching. And let's see how the NGINX is going to solve our problem. So we have 1 lakhs of users has been hitting to our XYZ website, and the developer got headache and he created another same server with a same web hosting, and now he kept the 3000 port number. So what he did, in between the user and the server, he placed a web server which is NGINX as a software. So he made a configuration in between the NGINX and the servers. Whoever request came from the user, or whatever request came from the user to the NGINX. So with NGINX, this developer made a configuration with NGINX. So NGINX is going to shift the traffic of 1 lakhs to the first server and second server, which means the NGINX is going to split the request of 50,000 to the one server and 50,000 to the another server. So here it is going to split this request. So what NGINX did and what NGINX resolved the issue was, we had 1 lakhs of requests had been coming from the users, and it has to equally transfer to the particular servers, and every time we need to configure the port number. So that's our major issue. And this is where the developer made a configuration with NGINX. The configuration was, whatever servers are behind the NGINX, either it is the XYZ and this is the first server, and we may have a second server, we may have a n number of servers behind the NGINX. So whatever request came to the NGINX, this developer has exposed a unique amount of port number, which is a 232. And whenever a user hit the 232 port number, this request goes back to the targeted servers, which means the NGINX has aligned with the two servers. The request goes to the two servers equally. So here, all the 1 lakhs of users are hitting to the NGINX web server with a port number of 232. In the background, the user doesn't need to be care about it. Whatever back server has a port number, either it is a 5000, either 3000, or another 1000 or 4000. So this is how NGINX has resolved such a complicated issue in the real world. And we have discussed about the features that the NGINX has been providing. And the first feature is load balancing, that we have discussed already. Let me recall again. So we have a 1 lakhs of request has been coming from the user, and then NGINX is going to take all the 1 lakhs of requests from the user, and it is going to equally transferring to the two servers which behind the NGINX. That is what we call as load balancing, which means the 1000 requests are the load, and it is equally distributing the 50,000 of requests to the one server and 50,000 of requests to the another server. So that is where NGINX has resolved such a complicated issue, and that's about the load balancing. And let's discuss about the reverse proxy. So what is a reverse proxy? So here we have a users of 1 lakh and we have two servers. Here the NGINX has been acting as a proxy in between. What does it mean? So user is only communicating to the NGINX server. So user doesn't care about how many servers are behind the NGINX server. So user only hit the request to the NGINX. The NGINX is going to pass the request to the particular server or a targeted server, and user doesn't know from which server he has been getting the request. That is what we call as reverse proxy. Again, I'm recalling. Whenever a user hit the request to the NGINX, so NGINX is going to transfer or is going to route the traffic to the particular targeted server as per the developer configuration. Here, user is not going to know that from which server he is going to get the response back to him. That's what we call as reverse proxy. So we have covered about the reverse proxy, and let's discuss about the HTTP caching. And let's take example. This developer has been hosting one e-commerce website on server 1 and 2, and this user wants to access the homepage of the particular e-commerce. So what user do? He hit the IP address with the port number of 232 and /home. So when he hit the particular endpoint, the request comes to the NGINX. So from here, it has to be transferred back to the server. So what developer did here, developer have made a configuration with NGINX That means if any user coming up with the endpoint of home, this NGINX has to redirect to the server 1. So he had given the path-based routing, which is called as a path-based routing. So if user coming up with a endpoint URL or endpoint with a home, so NGINX is going to take care of it and is going to transfer that particular request only for the server 1. So that's what we call as a home, which means the user has requested for the home page of the particular e-commerce and he is going to get the response back from this server through the NGINX and his browser. And if user requested for orders, so this developer made a configuration with NGINX saying that if any user asks for products or orders, so the response only transferred to the particular server 2. So that's where if the user requested for the orders, this request comes to NGINX. NGINX already know which server it has to be transferred. So he transferred the request to the particular server 2. It's called as an order or orders. And if this server get the request and it send the response back to the user. So this is how the NGINX can be used for routing. And what about the caching? That's what our point, right? As a third feature. So here, whenever a user requests for the home, the request comes to the NGINX and it transferred to the particular first server. When the request came and when the response shooting back to the NGINX through the user, the first response get delayed because of this server is going to give a response back through the NGINX. So when the NGINX is going to capture all the static content. And what does that mean, the static content? So static content is nothing but the images and the drop downs, everything that you can see on a home page. So what NGINX is do, and the first response, it is going to take all the static content, which means all the static data or images, it is going to store into the HTTP cache, which means NGINX caching. So it is going to store all the images with NGINX only. If the same user today or tomorrow hit the same request for the home, if you want to see the home page, the request goes through the NGINX, the only dynamic data only triggered and retrieved from the particular server. When it comes to static content, which is images or any kind of static content, it is going to load from this particular NGINX cache only. It is not going back to the server. So this is how, and the second time you are going to get the response very quickly. You can see, you can't see any latency in between your request and response. So this is how the NGINX has solved and with the complicated issues in the real time and has given the very major features, load balancing, reverse proxy and HTTP caching that we have discussed. So I hope it is clear for everyone and I'm going to stop this video over here. If you have any questions, feel free to drop in comment section, like this video, subscribe it and share to your friends. Thank you, stay safe.